Which creepy urban legend turned out to be true? The Grigstown cow, a supposed ghost cow that wandered New Jersey. It was said to only appear on foggy days and would disappear soon after. Local authorities discounted reports of the ghost cow, of course, as there had not been any dairy farms in that area for decades and no one was missing any cattle nearby. Then in 2002, a very old and arthritic bull, which matched the description of the ghost cow, was found stuck in a ravine. The old bull was unable to climb out of the ravine on its own, and, due to the animal's poor health, local veterinarians decided that euthanasia was the best option. The cow must have escaped a dairy farm and lived in the wild for decades and avoided humans all that time. It's assumed that the bull was seen during fog because it couldn't see people coming as easily. Black Volga. In the 60s and 70s, there existed an urban legend in Poland that vampires in black limousines were kidnapping people, preferably little children. It was a tale parents told their kids who would then tell their friends, etc. Turns out it was a rumor that was spread by the Polish secret police who actually used black cars to kidnap people. The aim was that no one would believe someone who would report they had witnessed a kidnapping. I remember being wary around all black cars since I'd never seen a Volga. Also, I heard the version of the tale where they would kidnap people to steal their organs and then dump their bodies by the road, which is messed up. Raymond Robinson, the Green Man. Dude lost his eyes and nose and wandered the streets at night in Pennsylvania because he couldn't go outside in the daytime because of how he looked. People saw him and an urban legend in PA was born. In Liverpool, kids are taught about Purple Aki from a young age. He's been locally known and feared for honestly 3 decades. He likes feeling boys' muscles and makes them do squats. He's completely real. He's even had court orders against him preventing him from feeling people's muscles. I hope you get vaped by Purple Aki as a common insult and a very real fear. I went to a university near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. It used to be a POW camp and a military hospital before the college bought the entire property for $1 in the 1960s. Since there are really only 3 universities near Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, it will not be hard to deduce which college it was, lol. Anyways, there was a rumor that underground tunnels and all sorts of stuff was left abandoned in the abandoned sections of the college. Sure enough, it was true. We found a tunnel hatch under our carpet in our dorm room. 2 hatches on the first floor, furthest most first floor dorm room of each building. It was literally like stepping into 1945. Everything was preserved down there, and the tunnels were massive. We eventually ended up in an underground garage, where there were 4 Jeeps parked but all the tires had dry rotted. We realized this was actually beneath our soccer field. Anyways, the tunnels lead to the cafeteria, the admin building, every dorm, and then an old abandoned section of our campus that we had no way of entering topside. We soon realized this was the hospital/morgue. When we got out of the tunnels and walked the floor, it was still like 1945. All the hospital beds were still there, the surgical curtains were still there. Hell, even the tools, like the scalpel, saw, pliers, etc., were still on their trays. It was like everyone all of a sudden up and left and nothing had been moved since then. The morgue still had its slabs and sometimes we would dare each other to slide in there for a period of time. But yeah, it was an urban legend on campus until 3 of us decided to risk expulsion to see if it was true. And it was. When I was a kid, my dad would take me and my brother to High Rock. It's a neat overlook and we could play on the rocks. It was fun, but also a little sobering, as much as things can be for kids, because a girl had died in a hang gliding accident, if I remember right. As you drive up to the parking lot for the overlook, the road continues on into the woods. We asked our dad where it went, and he told us that you'd be driving down the road and suddenly armed guards would pop out of the woods to stop you, because there was a secret government base there. That's the case, except it isn't really secret. It's Raven Rock, which is a nuclear bunker that can act as a remote Pentagon if the country is attacked. Cheney went there during September 11th, while Bush was taken somewhere else. You will be detained if you trespass on the property. I went back to High Rock a few years ago while visiting family, and while hanging out at the overlook, a truck of teenagers showed up. They asked if I knew what was up the access road, and I told them Raven Rock, and not to keep going, because they'd be detained. They decided they wanted to check it out anyway. An hour later, when I left High Rock, those kids had not come back yet, so I figured they were getting their asses chewed out by a soldier. Fun fact, Raven Rock is the headquarters of the Enclave in Fallout 3. This is, thankfully, a somewhat more light-hearted urban legend than a lot of the posted ones so far. So, I'd heard several times from friends and whatnot hearsay tales about this creepy, near-mythical shoelicker who resided in the Tampa area. Apparently, this dude would walk up to people in public spaces and would ask them about their shoes and ask to see the bottoms of them, and would then drop and do his best to lick the bottoms of the shoes before the person could step back down. Naturally, I thought that was just way too weird, and there was no way this wasn't just people making up some bullshit story. Then I ran into the guy at a taco truck. Skinny dude, longish hair, probably homeless from how he was dressed. Could have been 18. Could have been 30. Walks up as I'm waiting for what turns out to have been the best taco I've ever had in my existence, a cochinita pibble, for the curious, and asks about the shoes I'm wearing. I'd just finished performing and was still wearing some Doc Marten boots and was more than a little soused. He asks if he can see the treads or something like that. I'm all confused and am like, sure, why not? And he drops to the floor, grabs my boot, and starts licking away at the sole. I yelled at the dude, sort of kicked at him, and he scampers off. Weirdest ducking interaction ever. Edit. Welp. My highest Reddit comment is about a creepy homeless dude who licked my shoe while I was drunk and waiting for a taco. Fantastic. When I was young living rural Ontario, we were told as children not to wander too far into the forest, saying that a monster would get us and we wouldn't come home. If anybody knows who Rochdale is, that actually turned out to be painfully true. We had an older couple that would come into the store I worked at when I was 15. They clearly had mental development / mental health problems, and the rumor was they were siblings and the two teenage girls with them were their children. About 5 years later I'd find out someone had called the state about them, and turns out, from what I remember, to be mostly true. The parents were apparently the result of incest, and they carried on the family tradition, as it were. I think the state removed their daughters and put them in state custody since they weren't able to take care of themselves, and I don't remember what happened to the parents. There were abandoned tunnels below my town. A large part used to be a self-sustaining mental institution covering several square miles. Everyone talked about them, but no one ever talked about actually being in them. Went spelunking in the woods and found an old maintenance shack. There was a basement that was flooded. Went back a couple years later when there was bad drought. Basement has a rusted door leading into said tunnels. Nothing special, and no escape crazy people. Creepy Pete that used to hang out in the kids' pool every Saturday at the leisure center actually turned out to be a pedo. He got arrested a couple years ago. When we were little, the kids in the pool would swim through his legs and the parents would just laugh. Pedos were basically urban legends back then. Way too true now. This happened to me when I was a child. He lets us swim through his legs and hang onto his back while he swam up and down the pool. Sometimes he would even ask us multiple times if we would play with him. Now that I look back, I cannot believe that no one did anything about it. The man that worked in a law firm on the 24th story of a building had a running gag. He would tell everyone that the windows in the building were unbreakable, then proceed to run at one of them full force. Once, he did it, and the glass didn't break, but the window popped out of the frame, and he fell to his death 24 stories. I saw this on an urban legend show when I was a kid, but found out later that this really happened in my city, Toronto, Canada. My boyfriend works in the same building, and rumor has it that the man landed on a concrete bench at concourse level. A woman and her child had just been sitting there minutes before his fatal plunge. There's this road called Whippoorwill. Apparently it's either haunted or is a nesting ground for KKK / other creepy local cults. There are several articles about it on the internets. Anyway, myself and two friends drove there at night, and a big white Bronco came out of nowhere behind us with huge LED lights and tried to drive us off the road. A very narrow dirt road surrounded by dense trees. They were on our ass, like making us speed. A big hill came in the road. It's about a mile long, and you should be going slow. When we went over the top, the Bronco stayed behind and disappeared. It was intense. I figure they were patrolling for a cult / clan meeting. but there is some truth to that urban legend, that's a fact. The Asylum Lake tunnels in Kalamazoo are real. There is a small lake and wildlife area just off of WMU's campus, and for a long time there were rumors going around that they were still there and accessible. Well, turns out that was true, and there was an old set of stairs that was partially buried that lead to a wild up tunnel entrance. A few people used hand tools and ended up breaking part of the wall down and got inside, only to find the tunnels fully intact, albeit a bit damp and murky. Somehow the authorities got wind and went and sealed the entrance again, but it's still very obvious where that was if you are really looking for them. I often wonder if Stephen King's Children of the Corn was based on a northern town in Maine. I don't recall the name of the town, but my friends and I stopped in on our way to the furthest US point east. The town struck me very weird because every store clerk was like 14 to 17 maximum. Not just 1 or 2 stores every store. Aside from ourselves, we did not come across one adult in the 2 or so hours we were there. It was a depressed town, nearly a ghost town, and left me with a really unsettled feeling. I'm always late to these things. In Kenya, Mombasa, there was a story about a woman with long black hair and a white dress who would be seen around the beach at night, and it was to stop people from being at the beach swimming in the ocean. Turned out to be true, as older lady would sleepwalk on the beach in her 90s, even she didn't know until locals found the courage to follow her home.